Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Tech Talk. My name is Rachel Prophet, and I will be your moderator today. Today's session is part of a larger series, and the topic today is transforming business processes with an agentic mindset for customer engagement apps. This session is being recorded on behalf of the Microsoft Corporation. If you do not consent to be part of a recorded session, please disconnect your line. We encourage you to use the Q&A panel at any time to ask questions regarding content or to request support. We will be answering questions throughout and at the end of today's presentation. At the end of the session, please don't forget to respond to the survey. We appreciate your feedback as we use this information to improve future events. Presenting for us today from the Microsoft Corporation, we have Joe Thomas, Senior FastTrack Solution Architect, and Leo Solomons, Value Engineer from Mavim. Joe, over to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Rachel. So thanks for that introduction. I just wanted to kind of run through the agenda here and just let everyone know. So this is not a session about specific product features or implementation steps, although we do mention product features and implementation steps. It's about understanding the process foundation that Microsoft uses to drive a consistent, scalable Dynamics 365 implementation and how you can leverage it. So we're going to start out here with an introduction to business analyst with an agentic mindset. So on this slide, in today's rapidly evolving business landscape, the role of the business analyst has significantly expanded beyond documenting requirements or mapping existing workflows and kind of being a moderator. Our modern business analyst role kind of has to think holistically in terms of the end-to-end process, focusing on the broader flow of work rather than specific or isolated tasks. And this includes identifying the key handoff points between different roles, pinpointing delays between those handoffs, and understanding where decisions are made and where they should be made, because there is a difference when you're going through this type of transformation. So by separating work, decisions, and data, analysts can uncover inefficiencies, redundancies, and misalignment across systems and teams. So a critical mindset shift is underway in designing for progressive maturity. So beginning with clarity, advancing to efficiency, and then layering in the intelligence, and finally reaching the autonomy that we're all seeking here. So with the rise of AI and agents, analysts must also determine where human judgment remains essential versus where it can be augmented or replaced by automated systems. Ultimately, the modern business analyst is not just a documentarian, but a transformation leader, someone who is responsible for orchestrating how the work gets done across all these people, systems, and intelligent agents. This capability is essential to ensure that organizations don't simply digitize inefficient processes, but instead fundamentally redesign them for that scalability, adaptability, and that measurable business value. So we've established that the modern business analyst isn't just documenting processes that already exist. They're redesigning them from the ground up for scale. So this slide shows you the roadmap for doing exactly that. These 4 pillars are a maturity journey. So each builds upon the last one. The first pillar is the process foundation. And this is where you have to understand and redesign before you automate. Clear roles, clear decisions, clear flow. You can't automate what you don't understand. So that understanding is key. The second pillar is the agentic augmentation. So AI starts assisting decisions, data validation, content interpretation. Nobody's replaced. It's a shift from the manual to the assisted. And then the third pillar is agentic orchestration. This is where agents start to coordinate across systems, remove handoffs, and eliminate those delays. So assistance becomes orchestration. And the fourth pillar is the autonomous operation. So the agent in this pillar, the agent actually triggers actions, will predict outcomes, and continuously optimize on their own. Full agent-operated processes built on that foundation from step one. Now, how do you know where to start? So let's look at the specific signals in your process that tell you where AI adds the most value. So we've laid out those pillars. Now the question becomes, how do you prove this is working? That's what this framework is for. So the 7 categories, each measuring a different dimension of agentic value. So we'll start with productivity, the most intuitive one. Are we saving time? Are tasks getting done faster? Track time per task, throughput, and automation rate. The quality, the second box is quality. Quality asks us, is the output better? Are there fewer errors? Are there higher first time, getting things right the first time rates? And is there less rework? The next box is about efficiency. Efficiency is about speed, cycle times, specifically things like SLA compliance. Are we moving faster end to end than we were before? Fourth one is experience, and this captures the human side. So are customers and employees happier? This is typically measured by things like CSAT and employee satisfaction, which are quite often goals of these projects. Do those tell that story? Next, we move to adoption. And adoption is one people often miss, and sort of it becomes a byproduct in the hustle and bustle of an implementation. Are teams actually using the agents? Because if they're not, then what are we doing? And when they do, are they trusting the output or just overriding it or relying on some sort on an old shadow process? We've got, what is the financial impact? And this ties to the bottom line. So things like cost per transaction, revenue lift. This is ultimately what leadership is looking at from a success metric standpoint. And finally, and not to be last, but certainly not least, is risk and compliance. And this is incredibly important in this agentic world we're all rapidly moving to. Are we maintaining the control that's necessary? Are audit compliance rates and exception tracking there? And are they ensuring that you're not trading speed and efficiency for risk? So the key takeaway here is you don't need all 7 on day one. You can pick 2 or 3 that matter the most and prioritize those based on your stakeholder feedback, and then build from there. So now let's take a look at how to identify specific process signals where AI can add the most value. So this is a busy slide, but I'm certainly not going to read through it for you. But identifying where AI can add value begins with recognizing specific signals within business processes that indicate inefficiency or risk. So common indicators include rework loops, where tasks are repeatedly corrected, manual data reentry across systems, which I'm sure we're all extremely familiar with, which increases the likelihood of errors, of course, long approval cycles that slow down decision-making, inconsistent decisions driven by subjective judgment or lack of standardized criteria. Another major signal is reliance on emails or informal communication channel, which often lead to lack of traceability and accountability. Additionally, processes that depend heavily on tribal knowledge, which is information known only to certain individuals, or shadow processes, people having spreadsheets open in the background. These pose risks to scalability and continuity. Once these signals are identified, they can be mapped to appropriate technological interventions. For instance, repetitive tasks can be automated using workflow tools, while decision bottlenecks can be addressed with AI-driven agents that can provide recommendations or execute on predefined actions. So understanding these patterns allows organizations to prioritize improvements that deliver the highest value. Importantly, AI should not be viewed as a blanket solution, but as a targeted enhancement that addresses specific process weaknesses that we've identified, ensuring that improvements are both meaningful and sustainable. So this table gives you a consolidated, kind of at a glance view of the 7 metric categories we use to measure agentic value. So think of this as your measurement cheat sheet. Each row maps a category to what it measures and gives you specific metrics you can start tracking today. The left column tells you the what, the middle column tells you the why, and the right column tells you the how. Productivity and efficiency are typically where organizations start because the ROI is easiest to quantify. Time saved, tasks automated, cycle times reduced. Quality and experience are where you prove that speed isn't coming at the cost of accuracy or customer satisfaction. These metrics keep us all honest. Adoption is your sort of leading indicator. And then at the end of the day, if people aren't using the agents or the process that you've designed, or they're consistently overriding them, you have a trust problem, not a technology problem. Financial impact is your executive summary metric, and this is the one that gets the budget approval that you need and the executive sponsorship. Risk and compliance ensures you're not sacrificing, as we mentioned before, governance for speed, and this is incredibly critical in regulated industries like healthcare and financial services. So our recommendation, again, is to pick 2 or 3 categories that align with your stakeholders' priorities, establish baselines before deploying these agents, and then measure the delta. That's how you build the business case for scaling agentic capabilities across the organization. So we're going to pivot now to diagnosis before design, and not every problem needs AI, So we've talked about the transformation pillars and how to measure value. Now let's get into the actual diagnostic side of things. Because before you can fix anything, you need to know what's actually broken. This is the root cause analysis framework, and it works across 4 dimensions: people, process, data, and technology. Think of this as your diagnostic lens. So on the people side, you're looking at things like skill gaps, resistance to change, unclear ownership, or hierarchy. Are the right people in the right roles? Do they have the training they need? These are the questions that should be asked when we're doing that diagnosis. The process is about efficiency, consistency, and workflow integrity. Are there any steps missing? Are different teams doing the same thing in different ways? Data covers quality, accessibility, and governance. So if your data is accurate or inaccurate, siloed, or unmanaged, no amount of technology is going to save you. And technology, this is where everyone wants to start, but it should actually come last. Are your systems modern enough? Do they talk to each other? Are you even using the right tools for the job? So this is the key insight and the key takeaway. These 4 dimensions overlap. Most problems don't live in just one of those quadrants. A reporting issue might look like a technology problem, but the root cause could be data silos created by process gaps managed by untrained people. And remember this line: you cannot automate a process you don't understand. That's the foundation everything else builds on. Now let's make this real with some examples. This table shows 4 common scenarios where organizations jump straight to a technology solution and why that's almost always the wrong first move. Take the first one. Reports take 3 days to generate. The instinct is to throw AI at it. Automate the reporting. But when you actually diagnose the problem, you find that someone is manually pulling data from 5 different spreadsheets that don't talk to each other. The right solution: centralize your data sources first, and then you can automate. Second example, customer complaints about, say, slow response times. Everyone says deploy a chatbot, but the real issue is your support team can't see order history because the CRM and the order system aren't integrated. So fix the plumbing first. Sales forecasting is consistently wrong. No, your sales team isn't even following standard processes. Garbage in, garbage out. I'm sure we've all heard that and probably said that before. Standardize your methodology, then layer in the analytics. And data entry errors going up. Before you add more validation rules, ask yourself, did anyone train the staff on the new system? Sometimes the answer is a training program, not necessarily more technology or AI. The pattern's clear. Technology is rarely the first answer. Bad data creates bad predictions. Broken processes create broken automation. AI amplifies whatever's already there. So let's make sure what's there is worth amplifying and correct. So what does all this mean for the business analyst role? It's definitely evolved significantly. Let's talk about 3 shifts that define the modern business analyst in this agentic world. First, the 4 dimensions. Traditionally, business analysts focused on documenting requirements and translating between business and IT. That's necessary, but no longer sufficient. In this agentic world, you need to diagnose the root cause across all 4 dimensions: people, process, data, and technology. If you only look at one, you're probably going to miss the real underlying problem. Second, the amplification effect, and this is critical. AI doesn't create problems or solve them on its own. It amplifies whatever patterns already exist. If your processes are solid and your data is clean, AI accelerates your success. But if your foundations are broken, AI just makes the failure faster and more expensive. Your job as an analyst is to evaluate which scenario you're walking into before anyone deploys any technology at all. Third, strategic judgment. This is the new mandate. It's knowing when to recommend process improvement over automation, when to invest in training instead of buying yet another tool. So when data governance should come before any dashboard project. Not every problem needs a technology solution, and the analyst who can make that call backed by diagnostic evidence becomes an indispensable role. The bottom line, if you master these 4-quadrant diagnostic framework, you become the person who ensures your organization solves the right problems the right way. And that is your evolved business analyst role. So let's take a look at the anatomy of some business processes. So this slide shows the 5 core Dynamics 365 customer engagement products and the end-to-end business processes that they map to. Think of these as your starting points when scoping your project. So the first one is customer service. Whether you're doing contact center or a standard service implementation, this maps to what we call the case to resolution process. This is about taking in a customer issue and driving it through to resolution. Next is customer insights, and this covers your data and journey orchestration. This maps to the concept to market process. Think of it as how you go from understanding your audience to delivering targeted marketing. Next, sales and Copilot for sales. This maps to the prospect to quote process. It's worth noting that after the quote stage, this transitions into order to cash process, which is a different end-to-end process. Next, we have project operations, which maps to the project to profit processes. And this is end-to-end project delivery from initiation through to the final billing. And lastly, field service is service to deliver, the on-site service-like lifecycle from work order creation through completion. And at the bottom, you also see the distinction between product-centric and service-centric organizations. Each has its own pricing management process. Now, here's the important caveat that we'll cover on the next slide. So this is arguably the most important takeaway from this session. I want to pause here because this is a mindset shift that changes how you approach every CE implementation. We just showed you 5 products and their process mappings, but here's the thing. No product cleanly aligns to a single end-to-end process. In the real world, a customer service implementation doesn't just live in case to resolution. It can touch knowledge management. It can touch customer insights. Sometimes it crosses into field service dispatching. A catalog lets you filter by application, family, or product, and that's useful as a starting point. But if you let the product filter define your project scope, you're going to miss critical handoffs and dependencies. So the right approach, and this goes back to what we said about the modern business analyst, is to start with the problems. What are the business problems you're trying to solve? Then map the processes that address those problems. And only then do you select which technology and products will fit. Problems first, process second, technology third. If you flip that order, which quite often happens, you end up automating the wrong things or missing the bigger picture entirely. So let's keep this principle in mind as we move into the next section. So before we go deeper into the catalog and some examples, I want to take just a little step back about how we define a business process. When thinking about and documenting business processes, a good standard to use as a starting point is a standard IDF0. And if you haven't come across it before, it's a structured way to describe any process by breaking it into 4 key elements, which you can see here. Every process has inputs on the left, and that's the data that flows into the process. Controls at the top, the rules and constraints that govern how the process runs. Outputs on the right, the results the process produces, and resources at the bottom. These are the people and systems that actually execute the process. So this framework is important because it gives us a consistent language for describing processes at any level of the catalog. So let's walk through a concrete example, creating a case in customer service. So starting with our inputs, when someone creates a case, we need a contact or an account record to associate it with. A case category, a priority level, a description of the problem, the channel it came in on, whether that's phone call, email, chat. These are the things that must exist before the process can start. For the controls, these are the guardrails. Things like SLA policies and entitlements that determine response time commitments. Case routing rules dictate where the case gets signed, and business unit permissions control who can see and act on it. These aren't things the agent decides in the moment. They're set up ahead of time, and they govern the process automatically. On the output side, when this process completes, we get a case record created in D365, a notification sent to the assigned agent, an SLA timer that starts tracking against the response commitment, and the case gets added to the appropriate service queue. These are the tangible results. And finally, resources. A customer service agent who handles the case, the Dynamics 365 customer service application where it all happens, and the knowledge base articles they reference to resolve the issues. Without these resources, the process can't execute. The IDEF0 pattern can apply to every process in the catalog, whether it's creating a case, processing a purchase order, or running a payroll. When you're documenting or extending the catalog, always think about these 4 elements. So let's go into some specific examples on how to reimagine the process. So let's set the scene here. For the record, the company names have been changed to protect the innocent, and they probably look familiar to those of you who are familiar with the dynamic space. So let's set the scene. Let's walk through a real engagement. We'll call them Northwind Insurance. It's a mid-sized carrier, about 200 or so contact center agents handling claims, billing, and policy questions across 3 disconnected systems: a legacy CRM, a claims mainframe, and a separate billing portal. Their VP of customer experience came to us with a clear goal: cut the 18-minute average handle time in half and move their 52% CSAT score above 80%. So here's the things we found in discovery. Our BA team spent a week shadowing agents on the floor, which is super critical. And what they found was eye-opening. Follow the flow on this slide. A customer calls in and immediately hits the IVR maze. We've all experienced this at various companies. There's a 40% abandonment rate right there before ever even reaching a human or solving a problem. The ones who do survive that gauntlet sit on hold for an average of 12 minutes. When an agent finally does pick up, that agent has 0 customer history on the screen. The CRM doesn't talk to the phone system. So the customer has to repeat everything. And then comes the transfer. On average, 3.2 transfers per call because nobody has the full picture. And at every stop, the agent is manually copying and pasting between these 3 different applications, just to get basic information. The deeper findings, let's take a look at the underlying problems. So here's what really concerns us. Look at the bottom of the slide. No single source of truth. Each system had different data from the same customer, and agents had to mentally reconcile conflicting information in real time. Tribal knowledge. It was running the show. Senior agents had workarounds memorized, but new hires were completely lost, leading to inconsistent outcomes. Rework loops were everywhere. About 30% of calls were customers calling back about the same issue because it was not a first call resolution. Framing the opportunity and clearly defining the business goal, reduce handle time to under 9 minutes. Eliminate unnecessary transfers and get that CSAT above 80%. This is the broken process we start with. On the next slide, I'll show you how we first optimized this into a solid manual process and then how agents took it to the next level. So here's the simple contact center example. Right now, in today's world, every box would be a human effort. We're not going to change the process. We're changing who does which verb along the way. In other words, keep the recipe, adjust the cook. Move one verb to an agent at a time and don't boil the ocean. So what we can do is, once we have a good solid process, we can then begin to tackle and automate agentically. And we can break this up into phases. We don't need to boil the ocean. So let's say the first phase, let's start at the beginning of the process, is to tackle that disconnected IVR. Let's make it a conversational IVR, which eliminates that gauntlet and pressing 10 options to try and get to where you want. That will allow the customer to enter and talk to a human in a more, a less frustrated way, I should say. Maybe phase 2 becomes, let's start to deploy your customer intent agent. This is going to help identify that intent and then present to your agents the next best actions based on that intent. The third phase, then we can sort of take that intent, we can leverage the case management agent, and this is going to begin to automate some of those processes to create and update the case, automate the follow-up on the case based on the intent type, and help automate the resolution and all of the communication along the way. Phase 4 and beyond, we can extend each of these first-party agents via Copilot Studio, and that orchestration then becomes seamless, and that's where we get to that fourth pillar of automation. So we start out at the beginning of cleaning up the processes in general, and then layering in different agentic automations along the way. And so on the next slide, we're going to pivot over. Leo's he's going to talk through a little demo of the business process catalog. So Leo, if you're ready to rock and roll, I'll go ahead and hit play on this.
Right, thank you, Joe. So what we're going to see now is an example of the phased introduction of agents and how they can be represented in a operating model business architecture. To Joe's point earlier, right, creating that one single source of truth as part of the business analyst work. And we're seeing here an example of that where we're introducing representations of these agents, right? Starting first with the case management agent that will allow us to migrate those tasks, create the case as well as draft a response to that particular agent. And then we can continue with that phased approach where next the customer intent agent is introduced. And then lastly, we can see the call agent taking on the actual task of receiving the call. And in that fashion, in a phased approach, we have the proper representation captured as the processes within the operating model universe. And we can see that here through one of the interfaces of Mavim, where you both have the agent as a role participating in the process, but also all the context that is necessary for proper process execution, ranging from the definition of the activities to the associated relationships, to Joe's point on the IDF0 chart, where we see inputs and outputs represented here as well as those roles that are involved. And in more general sense, this is then part of the entire business architecture. In the Microsoft world, it would be the business process catalog with those end-to-end processes, as we walk through a couple of examples, obviously for CE and some of the other products. But in terms of approach, getting to that single source of truth and understanding from a resolution perspective what the true process is starts with that application of the definition of the process, the capturing of a process in an operating model through mechanisms as offered by Mavim as the business process capturing and documentation tool. So with that, a quick demo of the materialization of this, handing it back over to you, Joe.
Awesome. Thank you, Leo. All right, so we're going to kind of do the same thing with the sales process, and I'll set the scene here. Let's look at a different part of the business in sales. We'll call this uncreatively Contoso SaaS. Is a mid-market software company with about 40 SDRs doing both outbound and inbound lead qualification. They're generating plenty of leads from marketing. The top of the funnel is not the problem. The problem is everything that happens after that lead arrives. So let's walk through the broken flow. Follow the process across the top. A lead fills out a form or comes in from an event or whatever the intake might be. That intake sits in the marketing automation tool for an average of 26 hours before an SDR even looks at it. By then, the prospect has already talked to 2 competitors. When the SDR finally picks it up, they spend about 45 minutes researching the company, checking LinkedIn, reading form submissions, etc., just to write one email. And that email, it's a generic template with, wait for it, an 8% reply rate. Follow-ups are then manual sticky note reminders, no system of record. And qualification, pure gut feel, no scoring model, no data-driven criteria. The deeper findings, let's take a look at the underlying problems. So we looked at the cards at the bottom there. We identified these 4 fundamental problems. Speed to lead is the silent killer. The research shows leads contacted in under 5 minutes are 9 times more likely to convert, and Contoso's taking more than a day. There are 4 tools with 0 integration. You've got CRM, you've got marketing automation, LinkedIn, and email, all disconnected. And the worst part, 62% of inbound leads never even get a second touch. SDRs will cherry pick the leads that they're comfortable with, and the rest just sit there and rot. Framing the opportunity. So the VP of sales sets a clear target here. Let's respond to every lead in under 5 minutes, doubling the conversion rate, and get each SDR from 12 to 25 meetings per month. This is the broken process that we started with. On the next slide, I'll show you how we clean this up into an optimized manual workflow and then how agents supercharge the whole pipeline. Okay, so now that we've identified the broken processes and the lack of people and systems to support our proposed successful business process, how are we able to increase the sales throughput while also increasing the sales efficiency without blowing up costs? So as I mentioned previously, analysts must determine where the human agent judgment remains essential, where it can be augmented, and where replaced by automated systems. This is why the modern business analyst is a transformation leader, someone who orchestrates how work gets done across people, systems, and intelligent agents. Someone who views this transformation through the lens of the agentic, scrutinizes each aspect of the process at hand to understand where the human in the loop brings the most value. So here we've got the research and summarization, which is that 26-hour response time, 45 minutes of research per lead. We've got the lead contacts with the low reply rate and the almost no follow-up rate. No scoring, gut feel only. And the qualification process, purely by feel. So as we move into the agentic and apply this, we've got a lot of tools at hand. We've got the sales qualification agent who can take those heavy lift items like researching the lead details and summarization, that 26 hours and 45 minutes, and get us down to under the 5-minute target. That initial outreach, that can be automated as well, not just with a templated generic email that has an 8% email reply rate, but a unique response that can be based on a template, but also be personalized by your agent. The qualification process, as well as the conversion process. We can then layer in a later phase, the sales close agent, specifically the research portion, where we can do some discovery and present value to this potential customer. The second part of the sales close agent is the engage, where we take that value that was presented and we prove that value to the customer. The sales close agent arms your SDR with the information to do that proving ground. And then lastly, help negotiate and close. So not every step in every sales process in every organization can or should be automated. It's the role of the business analyst, with the help of the business process catalog, to fully understand these processes from beginning to end within the agentic context, to determine when to take advantage of the available tools and when to leverage a human sales agent. Next, since we did customer service sales, we're going to take a look at a field service process, and I'll set the scene here. So shifting to field service, we'll use Contoso again, Contoso Medical Systems. They manufacture diagnostic imaging and surgical equipment, MRI machines, CT scanners, surgical robots, etc. They have 25 field technicians responsible for the installation, commissioning, and certification of this equipment at hospitals and clinics. The devices work great and are amazing. The problem is getting the right tech with the right parts to the right hospital at the right time. So let's walk through the broken flow. Following the process across the top, a hospital submits an install request, usually by email or, believe it or not, fax. It lands in the dispatcher's inbox, and scheduling takes an average of 4.2 days because the dispatcher is manually checking a shared spreadsheet for tech availability. There's no skill to device matching. A tech certified for MRI might get sent to install a CT scanner. When the tech arrives, 60% of the time, the required parts weren't pre-ordered and aren't available. Nobody checked the bill of materials against inventory before dispatch. So the tech drives back. The hospital has to reschedule around operating room availability, and it costs roughly $1,200 per wasted truck roll. The deeper findings here, we'll look at the discovery cards. So scheduling is essentially a guessing game. 25 techs managed in a spreadsheet with no visibility into certifications, real-time location, or current workload. Double bookings happen all the time. Parts and prep are an afterthought. No one ties the work order bomb to inventory before the tech leaves. And 38% of jobs require a return visit because the wrong tech was assigned. In a hospital setting, that's not just a cost problem. It's a patient care problem. Equipment sits idle in a suite that could be serving patients. The VP of Field Operations here has set the bar. We'll schedule every install within 24 hours, cut return visits from 38% to under 10%, and hit 95% first visit resolution within the first 6 months. This is the broken process we started with. And on the next slide, we'll show you the optimized workflow and then how the agents transform the entire dispatch to commission pipeline. Good?
In frontier firms, AI agents work together with humans. Microsoft
Yes.
predicts that every business process will be supported by one or more agents. In this short video, we will dive into a Dynamics 365 field service example around the process of planning service work for contractors. This shows how you can use the Microsoft Business Process Catalog in Mavim to visually redesign a process and introduce multiple agents. A business process approach is more important than ever in transforming into a frontier firm. Processes provide clear guidance and structure in how the organization works. Business processes are easily understood by all stakeholders, including AI agents. Processes that are not clear can't be automated with AI agents. Having a single source of truth on your business processes is therefore the blueprint for starting your journey into enterprise AI. Having such a blueprint helps in many different scenarios. Organizations that are considering Dynamics 365 will benefit from having a process blueprint to understand the processes that Dynamics covers and to make clear AI use cases. During the implementation of Dynamics, fit gap analyses are done on the standard business processes. AI agents can be considered for bridging those gaps. For organizations that are already working with Dynamics, AI agents can be deployed to further optimize their business processes. Being able to plot AI initiatives into your business processes helps in visualizing and communicating the transition into the world of AI. Let's have a look at a real example. Here's a field service example. In field service organizations, scheduling is not just an operational task, it is a promise to customers about when their issues will be addressed. Traditionally, this complex process requires dispatchers to juggle numerous factors, including technician skill sets, travel time, and promise windows. Phase 2. The scheduling operations agent allows dispatchers to quickly and easily optimize technician schedules within seconds. When optimizing the schedule, the agent considers existing bookings as well as additional unfulfilled requirements. You can influence the schedule generated by the agent by crafting requirement views according to business objectives. Now let's see this in action in the Mavim process modeling platform, where the standard Dynamics 365 business processes are already available. In Mavim, we see the standard plan service contractor work process. Now we click the Edit button to open this process in editing mode in Visio inside Mavim. In the business process, each lane represents a role or function. In Mavim, these roles and functions are centrally managed and used throughout different processes. AI agents basically replace certain activities that belong to a role or function. So in Mavim, we manage the AI agents similar to the roles and functions. In this example, we're adding the scheduling operations agent into the process and move the corresponding activities to each AI agent. To reflect what the agent does, the title of the activity is changed from the manual activity of analyzing the availability of the contractor into the automated suggesting of the schedule done by the AI agent. Once saved, the end result looks like this, where there is a clear visualization of what parts of the process are covered by the AI agent. Since the AI agents are managed centrally in Mavim, you can add some more context and description to each agent. Mavim will automatically show all processes where this AI agent is applied to. This concludes the video in which we showed how the Microsoft Business Process Catalog in Mavim helps you in your AI journey from a business process approach.
So I think that concludes our presentation. We're going to walk through and just provide some of the Microsoft Business Process Catalog resources and recommendations. So what you see here are a series of aka.ms links to view the business process tech talks, the business process catalog, business process flow, etc. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to the biz process guides at Microsoft.com. And I think these are available, Rachel, to click on the link, and this will be provided. These links will be provided to attendees after the fact. if that's correct, I believe.
That is correct. They'll be on the community dynamics site.
Excellent. And there we go. And Rachel, if you wouldn't mind talking through some of these resources, you're much more familiar with those. That would be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like we've been sharing these with all of our tech talks, but these links here are links that you can learn more about Mavim. If you're interested in using Mavim in your own projects, we are planning to integrate Mavim into our implementation portal, but you can get started today with a free trial of Mavim using that QR code that you see on the screen.
Excellent. And just one thing about the Mavim team, in that field service demo that you saw, I think it definitely highlighted the fact that it is updated to the minute. So this agentic world is very rapidly evolving. There are features and functionality that are going from private preview to public preview to generally available very rapidly and changing. And the Mavim team and Rachel have done an amazing job in keeping that product catalog as absolutely up to date as possible so that you don't have to, which is a gargantuan task, I can assure you. So it is an eye-opening experience to click that start your free trial today and get started with this. It just accelerates your project. And then lastly, Rachel, okay, so the next Tech Talk is transforming business processes with an agentic mindset for finance and operation apps, which is in a couple of weeks.
That one will be very similar to this session, but we'll be looking at more examples of F&O related processes. So if you're more of an F&O consultant, that would be another great one to join us on. All right. I don't see any questions coming in. We'll keep an eye on it. And also if you want to reach out to our team, that email alias on our previous slide, you can always use that to reach out to us, or any of our feedback links out on our GitHub repo. This concludes today's event. The video will be made available on our Dynamics community blog and YouTube channel in the upcoming weeks. And we hope to see you on our next Tech Talk. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Rachel.